Welcome to 6-3. One of the richest people, Andrew Carnegie, and of course that is where Carnegie Hall in New York, Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. Andrew Carnegie was a person who was the leader, the absolute leader in the steel industry, and as after the Bessemer process was established, steel became a very important commodity in the building of the nation, and Andrew Carnegie controlled a massive amount of it, a huge percentage of all the steel in the United States, which made him a very wealthy man. As we can see here, there we go. Vertical integration was the way in which Andrew Carnegie was able to establish such dominance in the field of producing steel. And this is an example, of course, this has to do with beef production, but it's exactly the same thing. Vertical integration is where you own every step in the process. And so in this case, as we see, you'd own the cattle, the slaughterhouse, the railroad cars to transport it, the warehouse to store it, the meat packing plants to package it, and the delivery wagons to deliver it. So literally every single step, from cow to steak to delivery, is owned by one company. And this gives you a tremendous advantage over prices because you can charge your setter prices, but also you make profit in every single step of the way. Now, this is currently not legal, and oftentimes companies will attempt to own all the aspects of production, but the government can step in. Like we said in Munn versus Illinois, the government can regulate private industry, particularly to help competition. And the belief was that vertical integration was bad for competition. Another way to do it, and this is we'll see John Rockefeller did it this way, was horizontal integration. And this is much more like a monopoly that you've probably seen before playing Monopoly, where you own all the different colors of the streets, whatever it is. This is the same thing where you own all the smaller and eventually even bigger oil companies, and you put the small oil refineries together, and eventually you just build until you have the ultimate of the market share. Social Darwinism. This one is one of the most misused concepts that we've really come into in history. What it attempts to do is totally misstate what Darwin said, and Charles Darwin did not say the survival of the fittest. He said survival of those that are able to adapt. And what it does is that it applies these principles of, well, if you are poor, that's because you're not able to survive. You have a less ability to survive. You're not as smart. You're not as hardworking. Whatever the case may be. And if you are wealthy and well off, that's because you're at the top of the food chain and you're talented and smart and you have all these things going for you. And it really is completely not true. Mainly because, as you probably know, Darwinism has to do with what we call natural selection, which that you're not in society, you're in, well, nature. And of course, when you're in society, you are no longer in nature, and natural selection obviously doesn't work. But also, apart from that, I mean, how many people do you personally know that just had bad luck sometimes, or some things happen to you that are just out of your control? So social Darwinism is often used to justify, people who are super rich and people who are super poor, and it's your fault either way. We know it's total BS. There's John D. Rockefeller. Of course, Rockefeller Center, again in New York, was the head of Standard Oil Company, which actually had a horizontal monopoly and dominated the oil industry for quite some time in the United States. Became incredibly rich, had children and grandchildren that went on to be in politics as well. Sherman Antitrust Act. This, as you can see by the sort of cartoon there, see monopolistic trusts. So that is basically the horizontal and vertical integration. And as you can see, it says highway of competition. And the monopolistic trusts are in the way of competition. And the idea is, you see the hammer there, it says Federal Trade Commission. Well, let's smash that over and let's clear the highway of the competition. And that, again, the whole point is let's get fair competition. Fair competition will benefit everybody, but particularly the consumer. And this is a good way, and it still is a lot today, a good way to ensure fair competition. Samuel Gompers, we have a school named after him. And of course, he was a union leader and a early advocate for education, public education. He was the leader of a union called the American Federation of Labor. They're still around today, but they are called the AFL-CIO because they added a group called the Congress of Industrial Occupations, I believe it is. There's Eugene Debs. He was a leader of a different union, the American Railway Union, back when, of course, transit was much more popular than it is today. And another union, the Industrial Workers of the World. As you can see, it says radicals. And these were groups that tend to not really care if they upset the social norms or made people in society uncomfortable. And sometimes they'd even use violence, which made them very, very unpopular. And finally, another union leader, Miller Jones, was a organizer for the United Mine Workers. And that is it for today. Whoops, I guess I did not stop it. There we go.